What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you an early preview of Shadow of the Road, an upcoming sort of CRPG, TRPG set at the end of the Edo period of Japan that sees us in the role of several characters dealing with not only the political turmoil of the time, but also a more fantastical idea of those things, with things like yokai, steampunk technology, and all that built in. But I'm able to bring you this preview because Owlcat Games, the publisher of this title, gave me access to a closed alpha. Worth a mention that the developer is a studio called Another Angle. What's more, though, while this was, again, a closed alpha for me, today, when this is going live, I believe, the alpha itself is actually becoming an open alpha. So if you wanted to, you could go to the Steam page for the game and check this alpha out for yourself and see what I'm talking about here. Worth a mention there, though, that alphas are inherently very, very early. And while it varies a bit for every studio, alpha generally means that they're still working on core systems. Whereas something like a beta will have like systems and content be complete, but obviously lacks some polish. So just keep in mind that, again, this is just a very early look. But it nonetheless gives us a pretty good glimpse of combat, some of the characters, and things they have in mind in terms of exploration and whatnot. So this alpha kicks off with our two characters recently having become Ronin, more or less, before eventually setting off on a journey to find a young boy who has displayed some measure of supernatural power, and thus has caught the attention of important people, which is why we are sent to protect him and see him on his way, which puts us into contact with a fair few of our initial characters. So we have Satoru, Akira, Ishida, and I think it's Asuke. I'm sure I probably mispronounced at least one of those. I'm sure somebody will tell me about it. But either way, basically we've got our samurai, our archer, our big tank, and then a support character. I don't believe this is everyone that will be in the final game, mind you, this is just what was here in the alpha. But nonetheless, using them as a sort of template, we do get a pretty good idea of what combat is about, and it looks to be an action point and movement point based system, which also deals with a sort of timeline for individual character actions. Basically, every time you make an attack based on your character's stats, or any potential abilities that have been affecting them, they then get the opportunity to take their next movement whenever they fall on the timeline, instead of just, in a set order. I've seen multiple games do this, mind you, and for the most part I think it works pretty well, and it winds up with an endgame, though, that is focused on basically taking as many turns as possible while denying enemies the ability to take any turns, and we already see some of that at play here. For instance, enemies, and you, really, can use skills that work on a delay. Basically, you activate them, but they don't fire right away. They rather put your character on a position within that timeline, and then the actual action happens when that time has elapsed. But the catch here is that if you are attacked, you have the potential to either break or be broken, which cancels that attack that you're readying while also granting you action points as a result, meaning that you could potentially break someone's focus here, focus being a stat that protects you against this kind of thing. But if you can break somebody's attack, you get extra actions, and then you can keep following it up for maximized turns. And that, in addition to increasing any stat that gives you more turns by default by simply increasing your placement on the timeline, and abilities that help you out with this, such as Leader's Call, which we see here, is really what's going to wind up being the end game. But what does have me especially interested is the skills themselves. So as you move through the game, each character does have a skill tree associated with them, which is where they're going to get more abilities and upgraded abilities. Pretty standard stuff there, I would say, but the catch being that some of these skills have different cooldowns and approaches. So some skills may only trigger their cooldown by killing a certain number of enemies, whereas other abilities might simply be a number of rounds. And then, of course, each individual character has skills tailored to their role in combat. And outside of just maximizing damage, you want to focus on abilities that shift or alter that timeline in your favor by either moving you forward or your enemies back. Combat isn't the only thing we get to look at here, though. We do actually get a little bit of exploration, which shows off the possibility of some side quests, including a little choice and consequence. For instance, we have the opportunity to either steal from an abandoned cart or not, which then leads to, along with other conversation options, fluctuations in each of these characters' sort of moral standing. For instance, they can become more samurai-like or follow the path of a Ronin, as an example, and they also seem to have some inter-party dynamics as well, with some sort of relationship meter ticking up there as well. And then exploration seems to have at least plans to deal with a few side quests, though that seemed at least a little on the small side here, and then obviously the opportunity to find things like loot and whatnot lying around, which mostly seem to be things like battle consumables, as I didn't see anything related to any sort of gear or progression in that sense otherwise. But, again, it's an alpha, so it may very well be coming at some point. Now, putting all of that together, for the most part, I have liked what I've seen here. Seems to be headed in the right direction, though obviously very early. On the flip side of that, though, there are things that I did not see here that I would have liked to have seen. For instance, we know that there's going to be an emphasis on things like yokai and sort of steampunk monstrosities and man-made horrors beyond our comprehension. And while we see a little bit of the yokai in the sense that, we literally just encounter a couple of them, they didn't play into this alpha too much. So I think, at least in terms of what those things actually bring to the table or offer in terms of interesting stories or even fights, has yet to be seen, and thus I can't really comment on it. So broad strokes, I would say Shadow of the Road seems to be pretty promising, though that's probably no surprise given how it's looked up to this point, but it is nonetheless still a ways off to be sure. With that in mind, I am not currently expecting this game to release probably anytime this year. I think the earliest we would see this is likely late 2026, though we will certainly have to see. And naturally, as I'm interested in it, I will be covering all of that along the way, so if you enjoyed this and want to see more, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Let me know how you feel about it down in the comment section below. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.